Hi everyone, welcome. Hope you're all well. And this is going to be our third attempt at making a drop vase. Now I don't know whether you've seen the videos of the first two attempts. I'll put links either in the description or at the end of this one. But have a look at those and I'll give you an idea of what's gone wrong so far. Now this week I'm going to be taking that same glass that I used last week and fusing it back down, and we're going to try again to make that drop vase. Now just a reminder, if you haven't seen my channels before, all of the glass I'm using is Bullseye 90 COE, so any firing schedules I give you, you will need to adjust for your COE if you're using 96 or something like that, and obviously for your kiln as well. Stay safe, wear your masks, wear your safety glasses, and keep yourself safe at all time. Now this week I really want to thank you all for supporting me, all those regulars that come and watch my videos every week. Believe me, that helps me, it gives me motivation, and I really appreciate that. If you want to support me further, don't forget, if you like the video, give it a thumbs up, share it with people that friends, family, whatever, and subscribe if you haven't already subscribed. And down the bottom we've got our thanks button where you can make a small donation if you wish. And don't forget, over on our store and our website you can always buy yourself a nice glass fusing related t-shirt or a mug or something along those lines. So let's get into a third attempt at making this drop vase. Keep your fingers crossed. We'll actually cross everything. Okay, this is our setup here. I have taken the original form that I made up. I've extended it with another little piece, so it'll give us a disc big enough to pretty much fill that entire mold. And I'm going to take all of this, melt it down, put it in this of course, and melt it down and make ourselves a brand new disc. I'm going to line my former with 3mm fibre paper, and then I'll have thin fire on the shelf as well. Just a reminder, all the glass I use is Bullseye 90 COE, so you should adjust any firing schedule I give you to suit your COE and your kiln. Stay safe and make sure you wear your mask and safety glasses wherever necessary. So if you've got any questions on what I do here today, just make sure you ask them in the comment section below and I will answer them for you. Or at least I'll try. As far as all the glass is concerned, it will take me a little while to set it all up. So, and that's because of the variations in the thicknesses. So I'll just get on and I'll do that now. Okay, there we go, it's all in, and there is a lot of glass in there, so I'm hoping I got the fibre paper high enough, but it should be. So we'll get it in the kiln and we'll see how it comes out in the morning. Okay, it's all fused up. Unfortunately, it's a little thicker than I wanted. I did take some of that glass out because if you remember, we were going from a square down to a round, so obviously there's more glass going into that area, but I didn't take enough out. So it's about 13 mils thick, which is a bit thicker than what the other one was. I actually like the pattern. Maybe I should break things up more often and refuse them. So that pattern I think is going to look really nice when we stretch it. We've got a lot of clear on the top, so we've got a lot of good depth. It's just pretty hard to show on a camera. You can see that's sort of all clear there. Everywhere that's white, it's clear. Unfortunately, there are bubbles that have surfaced, so you can see them here. But I am going to sandblast all of this and put it in the kiln, sandblasted, because if you remember last time, the inside surface, which was just black and sandblasted, polished completely. So I'm interested to see what happens when this slumps, or drops I should say, and sandblasted, to see what sort of finish we get. Whether it'll all polish or we'll have some sort of graduation down the side from polish to satin finish, I'm not too sure. But that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to sandblast the whole thing, and then I'm going to put it on the mould and slump it sandblasted. I'm not going to fire polish it beforehand. Okay, so I'm going to go and sandblast this now, and then we'll get in the kiln and keep our fingers crossed, keep an eye on it, and hopefully we'll end up with a nice drop vase. There we go, it's all sandblasted. It has exposed some more holes. Obviously the glass on the top of those was very thin, so the sandblasting just blasted it away. Interested to see what happens with those when we finish the bowl. May add some interesting texture to the outside of the bowl. Anyway, I'll get it in the kiln now and get it going. Okay, here we go. Last time I looked, this was still in one piece, so let's have a look. Whoa, yes it is. All in one piece. Has it touched bottom?
Yep, touch bottom properly. It should sit nicely. We've got a lot of glass left on top. It's very thick. But basically it's worked. Anyway, I will get this out of here, get it all cleaned up, and we'll have a closer look.
So let's have a look. How did this actually go? Well, it's all in one piece, which is great. And now remember, this was all sandblasted before I put it in. So it has polished nicely on the inside. Got a nice little bit of veining on the inside there. And polished on the front, or top I should say. Polished around the top part of the bowl, but towards the bottom it's got a little bit more like a satiny sort of finish. So I pretty much expected that would polish up there, because that's where most of the stretch would be, and that on the bottom we'd have that a little bit of a texture. I think I'd probably polish it in future, because I don't think what you gain out of not polishing it, that little bit of texture is worth it. I think I'd rather have it polished all the way down. We've got, you can see there too, by the way, that sandblasting certainly has retained its texture a lot where it sat on the ring. We've got a lot of glass on the top there, a lot more than should have been in there, but that's not a problem. At some point I will probably break that up, add something to it, and maybe we'll make another one out of it. Now, there was those bubbles, if you remember. So we wanted to see what would happen with those. Obviously all the ones up here have been well and truly stretched. There's some little ones which you might be able to see and get the light right. There's some little ones there that are stretched. But the ones that were towards the bottom haven't stretched. So there was a couple there. They're not sharp or anything. They're just a bit odd. Actually, if that was all over it, that would be quite interesting. Interestingly, the clear that is up here, there's quite a lot of clear that you can see. So there's quite a bit of depth of it. Because this is stretched, it's not there. But in here, this is like a hole. And if you look into it, you can see a bit of shadowing in there because it's clear right into the middle. So that's quite interesting. There's two of these. That one started to stretch. But yeah, interesting. I wonder if you could incorporate that into a piece so that it showed all the way around. Think about that one. Anyway, it's worked. I think it's worked. You can see the patterness there that we had. Up the top up here is a lot thinner than down here. This is where I'll be cutting it off. Where it comes through here, there's but can't really show you, but if I feel it curves. There's a little bit of a curve that way just here, where it's come through the hole, and then it thins out a little bit further down. I'm not going to be able to cut it this week for this video. I will try and cut it next week. I think I'm going to use a little diamond saw. I'm not game enough to score and snap it. So I think a little diamond saw, and I will probably cut it off around here somewhere. Anyway, that'll be another video. So, that worked. I'm happy with that. I think even though it was a bit of a random pattern, that's worked out nicely. There are things to do with the finish of that are maybe not quite right. There's a bit of, I'm not quite sure how to describe it, but ridging around the top where it's stretched through. I don't know whether that's normal. I don't mind it so much. It adds a little bit of texture and interest to it, but it's not quite what I expected. But overall, I think it's gone well so far. I haven't cut the top off yet. Now, I've learnt quite a lot through this, and I'm sure you're going to be asking me questions about it. So I'm going to try and cover a few of the things that I've learned over this whole exercise.
and I do have a list here, so excuse me for looking at the list every now and then. The first thing, obviously, in that very first attempt was the quantity of glass and the size of it. We used a disc that sat on the drop mould. It didn't fill out to the edge of the drop mould. I think that was the problem. I think the thickness was fine. There just wasn't enough glass there, and it literally pulled in and dropped through. Another part of that is probably the friction to keep that glass there as it's dropping through and softening. I, in this attempt, used, I think it's 2mm fibre paper, and that suggestion come from somebody out there. I went looking through all my comments for who this was so I could give you credit. Couldn't find it. So if you're the one that gave me that suggestion, please put a note in the comments and take some credit for that, because I think that has contributed to a more successful drop. So we used that to get friction, and I made the glass a neat circle that fit pretty much the entire drop mold. Now, in another one, I might try the square again, but just with smaller corners. Yeah, overhanging those was obviously never going to work because it trapped the mold and built up stress as they cooled differently. And I think that was a big factor in that breakage last time. Now, another thing in that other one, and that's the other video, is I said I didn't think it was to do with the annealing. I've rethought that, because the recommendation from Bullseye is that if you've got an uneven thickness in a piece, you double the recommended annealing time for the thickest part of that. And a factor I never took into account was the fact that we will have an uneven thickness because we'll still have a fairly thick piece on the top. It'll thin out where it stretches, and we'll have a thick base. And I didn't double that annealing time. In this one, I've doubled the annealing time. Now, the recommended for 12 mils is 3 hours. I hope I got that right. And this was around that thickness, so I doubled that and I annealed it for 6 hours. So I think that was a big lesson to learn. Make sure that your annealing time allows for the maximum thickness that you expect, and then double it because of the variation in thickness that you'll have. Now, another thing was a couple of things cosmetically, I suppose. The holes that we've seen, interesting that they stretched to give you a nice look about it. That's just the small encapsulated holes. That exposed hole that we had from the bubble didn't go away completely, but it did add an extra little dimension to the texture. So that was interesting to note. And I did, because I recycled all the glass from the last attempt, I think that just proved that a really simple pattern, in this case there wasn't anything designed, gets transformed in this whole drop process, and everything gets stretched and it looks quite nice. Another thing that we found was that the sandblasted side of the piece, which in the original one was on the inside, came to a high polish. I didn't expect that. I expected there to be a little bit of texture left in it. But interestingly, it came to a high polish. On this one, inside was a high polish. Outside, we had that texture from that ridging. And towards the bottom of it, there really wasn't, well, there wasn't a high polish, but it wasn't exactly satin either. So it just left a little bit of a texture to it. So overall, I don't think there's any benefit in leaving it sandblasted, and you're probably going to get a nicer finish by polishing the piece before it goes in the kiln. And that's another thing I learnt. Very important to watch it. I think it was the second one, the first one. First of all, I didn't watch it early enough and it just fell through. In the second one, I was over the top and I watched it probably too early and too often. So that was just stress levels, I suppose. In this one, I had a good idea where to start watching it, and that wasn't until it got to about 6:25, I think. And then I started watching it when it got to 660, which is the temperature I set it to. And it only took a few minutes then for it to drop and touch the base. And when it did that, the other thing I learned, and this comes from the second one as well, that if you stop the hold just before it touches the bottom, it will continue to stretch just enough to create a nice flat base for it to sit on. So the next video to do with this will be the cutting, as I said, and hopefully that'll all go well. So I hope you enjoyed that and learned quite a lot, as I did. I would appreciate your support. Don't forget, hit that thumbs up button. Every couple of dollars helps. Believe me, it keeps this channel going. So don't forget, again, a couple of suggested videos up there. Our subscribe button is right there. And until the next video, which I hope won't be far away, I'll say bye for now.